I'm Marin, and this is Post-its and Pens. Hello and welcome to or welcome back to my channel. My name is Marin, and here you will find a little beauty, a little books, and a little teaching content. So if that sounds like something you might enjoy, I would love for you to subscribe and stick around and join me in my little corner of YouTube. Today's video is going to be all about the 23 books that I want to read in 2023. So let's go ahead and get into the video. So first of all, this will be the third year that I am making a list of books that I want to read in that calendar year. So I will link both the 2021 and 2022 versions down below. To do a quick recap, in 2021, I managed to read 20 of the 21 books on the list in the calendar year. I did have to carry one over into January. And then for the 2022 list, I am currently in the process of reading the last few books. So I have 3 of the books in progress right now, and then a 4th that I have not started. However, I am about to go out on my winter break. I have 2 more days of work left, and I know that I have plenty of time to get all of those books wrapped up. So I will not be carrying any books over into January with the 2022 list, yay. So that means it was time for me to start thinking about my 2023 list, and I came up with a list of titles that I feel like I'm going to really have a good time reading. Now they are a mix of genres, and why I chose them for the list is also different. So let me kind of talk you through my thought process. For both my 2022 and 2023 lists, I took a look at my Goodreads Want to Read shelf, and I picked the top 10 books that had been on that Want to Read shelf for the longest amount of time. And I put those on the list for that year. So for 2022, I took the 10 oldest books, not oldest in terms of when they were published, but oldest in terms of how long they'd been on my Want to Read shelf, and I put those on my list. Then I filled in other books that I was wanting to read to fill the list out. And that's kind of what I'm going to do this year as well. So for 2023, I again looked at my Want to Read list on Goodreads. I took the top 10 books that had been on there for the longest, and I put them on this list. Then I also looked at books by authors that I had given 5 stars to previously, and I put some of their backlist titles on my list to read because I have a goal to kind of read through my favorite authors' backlists, obviously. And then I took a bunch of books that I have just heard a lot of other people talk about that they really enjoyed, and I put those on the list as well. So what I'm going to do in this video is just take you through the 23 titles on the list. I'm going to give you a tiny little bit of a synopsis for each one because I don't want this video to be crazy long, and I will list all of the titles down below in the description box in case you would like to just check out more about the books once you've watched this, because otherwise we will be here all day and no one wants to sit through a video that's that long. So what we're gonna do is I'm just going to start at number 1 and go all the way through 23. These are not ranked in the order that I want to read them. The top 10 are the oldest on my Goodreads Want to Read. So the books that I have been wanting to read since 2012, I'm just gonna put that date out there. These books have been on my Want to Read list since January of 2012. So here we go with the first book. So the first one is Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of Nim by Robert C. O'Brien. There is a movie version of this book. I watched the movie when I was little and always wanted to read the book, but never got around to it. This one will be very, very quick because it is a children's book, but I am very curious to see what I think about the book compared to the movie, and I will probably do a rewatch of the film. I will probably vlog it just to talk about it, so you can stay tuned for that. Basically, Mrs. Frisby's husband disappears, and it has to do with this group of rats that are doing this like experimentation. And the fallout from that. So that's kind of just a quick little synopsis for that one, but that is the first book on my 2023 list. The second book on this list is a chunker, and that is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, or Mr. Norrell. I don't really know how to pronounce it. Everyone says it differently. This book is by Susanna Clarke. I have owned this book since it came out. Let's just take a look and see when that actually is. 2004. So I've probably owned this since 2004. I know that I picked it up during the time when I was working at Barnes & Noble, because again, I feel like a lot of people were reading this at that time. There were a lot of people coming into the bookstore and purchasing this, so I picked it up on a whim. It is historical. It has to do with two different magicians, and they're kind of like in a competition of sorts, and basically they have different types of magic. One of them is kind of like a dangerous type of magic, and that's all that I really know. But it says on the back, this is a masterpiece of the genre that rivals Tolkien, which is a pretty bold statement. So I am very excited to read this. Again, it is so large, which is why I have not read it up to this point. It has 1,006 pages, but it is a mass market paperback, so hopefully this will be a decently quick read. I will probably listen to some or all of it on audio, not gonna lie, but I am excited to give this a read and finally decide if it's something I want to keep around on my shelf. So this is book number 2. Book number 3 is another one that's been sitting around my shelves for a long time, and that is Angels and Demons by Dan Brown. I did read the Da Vinci Code years and years and years ago. Picked this one up because I wanted to read like the prequel to that one. I did not watch the movie of this one. This is like the movie cover, because this is what they had at the bookstore when I was working there. This is another one that was published in 2000, and basically I picked it up because the movie was coming out. I decently enjoyed the Da Vinci Code book. The movie was kind of meh, but I did enjoy the book, and I was curious to read the prequel. So this is another one that has been hanging around for a very, very long time. It has 477 pages, and if you are not familiar, this follows world-renowned Harvard symbologist Robert Langdon, who's summoned to a Swiss research facility to analyze a cryptic symbol seared into the chest of a murdered physicist, which is very similar to like the Da Vinci Code. So I am curious to read this one. Hopefully I will enjoy it. It's been so long since I've read the Da Vinci Code, I don't remember a ton about it, but I did like it decently well when I read it. So we will see what I think about this one. I am basically putting it on this list because it's been hanging around for a super long time, and I just want to get it read. So this is book number 3. Book number 4 is another children's book, and that is The Upstairs Room by Joanna Reese. It's probably pronounced Johanna because I'm pretty sure she's Dutch. Okay, so she's Dutch. This is a true story of her life when she was hidden in an upstairs room during World War II and the Holocaust. She is taken in by a family who offers refuge to her and her older sister. They hide out for 2 years in the upstairs room of a remote farmhouse, and it's her story. I'm actually really excited to read this one because I have heard really good things about it. I am a very big fan of anything to do with World War II and the Holocaust. I like reading memoirs and things like that that took place during that time period. So I feel like this one's going to be a very good book. It's going to be very quick. It is a children's book, but this is the next one on the list that I am super excited to finally read. And I did pick up this kind of updated cover, which I also think kind of just sets the mood really, really well. Book 5 on this list actually is a book that my friend loaned me, and I never got around to reading. She loaned it to me not in 2012. I'd had it like on my list to read since 2012, but I don't feel like I've had the book that long. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But that is A Countess Below Stairs by Ibbotson. This is a historical book that's set during the time period right after the Russian Revolution. It follows Anna, who is a young Russian countess, and she flees to England because of everything that goes down during the Russian Revolution and the death of the ruling family. And she basically takes a job as a servant in the household of a family in England, and she's trying to keep her past a secret. So This is kind of her story. I've always been intrigued by the cover. There's just something about it that seems really, really beautiful to me. I like the way her hair is, the jewel around her neck. So I'm very excited to finally give this one a read and return it to the friend that lent it to me all those years ago, who's probably forgotten at this point that she even lent the book to me. But there we go. That is number 5 on this list. Okay, book number 6 is The Forgotten Garden by Kate Morton. To be honest, I don't know much of anything about this book. I feel like I was drawn in by the cover and kind of the way it reminded me of The Secret Garden, because it's kind of a similar title and the cover is very similar. So I'm going to go ahead and just read you a tiny bit of the synopsis off Goodreads, which says, a foundling, an old book of dark fairy tales, a secret garden, an aristocratic family, a love denied, and a mystery. The Forgotten Garden is a captivating, atmospheric, and compulsively readable story of the past, secrets, family, and memory from the international bestselling author Kate Morton. Cassandra is lost, alone, and grieving. Her much-loved grandmother, Nell, has just died, and Cassandra, her life already shaken by a tragic accident 10 years ago, feels like she has lost everything dear to her. But an unexpected and mysterious bequest from Nell turns Cassandra's life upside down and ends up challenging everything she thought she knew about herself and her family. Inheriting a book of dark and intriguing fairy tales written by Eliza Makepeace, the Victorian authoress who disappeared mysteriously in the early 20th century, Cassandra takes her courage in both hands to follow in the footsteps of Nell on a quest to find out the truth about their history, their family, and their past. So it does sound right up my alley. Historical, a mystery element, dark fairy tales. So I feel like this is one that I'm really, really going to love, and it is the 6th book on this list. Number 7 is a book that, again, I have had hanging around for a very, very long time, and that is The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson. I did read another book by Erik Larson, which was In the Garden of Beasts. I think I read that in 2021, and I quite enjoyed it, so I am curious to see what I think about this one. This is got the little tagline, Murder, Magic, and Madness at the Fair That Changed America. So it is set during the Chicago World's Fair. Also, the cover is pretty neat looking, honestly, like with the gold and yeah, it works for me. So it says, bringing Chicago circa 1893 to vivid life, Erik Larson's spellbinding bestseller intertwines the true tale of two men: the brilliant architect behind the legendary 1893 World's Fair, striving to secure America's place in the world, and the cunning serial killer who used the fair to lure his victims to their death. So yeah, I'm intrigued. Again, I've read a book by Erik Larson that I really enjoyed, so I feel like I will enjoy this one as well. I do like historical nonfiction, and last time In the Garden of Beasts was told kind of with a nice narrative style that kept me engaged, so hopefully this one will be told in the same way, and I will also like this one. At number 8 is Water for Elephants by Sara Gruen. This is another one that I've just heard a lot about and I saw a lot of people really enjoying during my time working at the bookstore. So this one says, when Jacob Jankowski, recently orphaned and suddenly adrift, jumps onto a passing train, he enters a world of freaks, drifters, and misfits, a second-rate circus struggling to survive during the Great Depression, making one-night stands in town after endless town. A veterinary student who almost earned his degree, Jacob is put in charge of caring for the circus menagerie. It is there that he meets Marlena, the beautiful young star of the Equestrian Act, who is married to August, the charismatic but twisted animal trainer. He also meets Rosie, an elephant who seems untrainable until he discovers a way to reach her. Beautifully written, Water for Elephants is illuminated by a wonderful sense of time and place. It tells a story of a love between two people that overcomes incredible odds in a world in which even love is a luxury that few can afford. So historical setting, circus books, I tend to have like a fondness for circus books, and this one just sounds kind of right up my alley. So I am very excited to finally get around to reading this one, and hopefully it will be a 5-star. At number 9 is Cleopatra, A Life by Stacy Schiff. Now, she is known for like writing biographies about famous people. So this one basically just tells the tale of Cleopatra's life. So on the book it says, Stacy Schiff boldly separates fact from fiction to rescue the magnetic queen whose death ushered in a new world order. So basically, a lot has been talked about Cleopatra. Some of it is true, some of it's not true. She uses like classical sources for the story, and I feel like this will be a very, very interesting tale. I've had this book for a very long time. Let's see when this one was published. 2010, so not as old as some of the other ones. But again, I feel like I may have picked this up when I was working in the bookstore or still frequenting the bookstore to like talk to friends and stuff who still worked there, because I believe I saw this one come out in hardback and then waited for the paperback. But I am very, very excited to read this one. I feel like I'm really going to enjoy it. I do really like memoirs, biographies, things like that, especially when they're backed up by fact. And I feel like this will be a good one. So we will see what I think, and hopefully I will enjoy it. Okay, and coming in at number 10, which means this is the final one that was put on this list just because of how long it had been on my want to read list, is the Histories by Herodotus. Now this says it is a compelling Greek view of the world in the 5th century BCE, but basically it just talks about his travels throughout the world at this point in time, and he writes down everything that he learned, and he kind of just keeps really good track of everything that went down during this time. I feel like this is going to be very, very interesting. I really love anything to do with ancient Greece, so I feel like this will be a good one. It is chunky. I've got some chunkers on this list. You'll see another one coming up a little bit later. So the story actually ends on page 603. So all of this is notes, footnotes, index, that kind of thing. But I do really feel like this is going to be a good time. I have heard that this translation is very, very readable, and I'm very excited to finally give this one a go. I do not see myself like diving straight in and reading it straight through. This will probably be one where I take in bits and pieces, but I am planning on getting it finished in 2023. So now we are on to the part of the list that I put the titles on because I either wanted to read more of an author's backlist or I had just heard about these books and was curious and wanted to give them a try. So coming in at number 11 is Out of the Easy by Ruta Sepetys. I have read 2 books by her. I read Between Shades of Grey in 2021, and last year I read Salt to the Sea. Both of them were 5 stars. I did like Between Shades of Grey a little bit more than Salt to the Sea, but both were just very, very well written, and I am very excited to finally give Out of the Easy a go. This one came out in 2013, so I did actually receive an ARC. Never got it read. I actually did not start reading her books until 2021. I was very late to realize how great of a writer she is. And I do own like all the rest of her books. So up on my shelf, I have Fountains of Silence and I Must Betray You, which are the other 2 books she's written. So I am hoping to maybe get through all of them this year, but we'll see. I don't mind putting her on these yearly lists because it's kind of fun to read her backlist. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of read you the inside flap from this one because it will do a better job than I can to explain what it's about. But it says, it's 1950, and as the French Quarter of New Orleans simmers with secrets, 17-year-old Josie Moraine is silently stirring a pot of her own. Known among locals as the daughter of a brothel prostitute, Josie wants more out of life than the Big Easy has to offer. She devises a plan to get out, but a mysterious death in the quarter leaves Josie tangled in a police investigation that will challenge her allegiance to her mother, her conscience, and Willie Woodley, the brusque madam on Conti Street. So I'm sure I will love this one just as much as I've loved the other ones. There's just something about her writing, the way she writes historical fiction that really, really works for me, and I am very excited to finally give this one a go. Okay, coming in at number 12 is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This is one that I have just heard a lot of people really talk about. I know Meg at Meg with Books loves this series, and it sounds very much up my alley. I like mystery, and this one is like a YA mystery, so it's a little bit different than what I have been reading this year. I've been reading a lot of adult mystery thrillers, so I'm curious to see what I think about this one. So let me just read you the little synopsis. So it says, this one is about a closed local murder case that doesn't add up and a girl who's determined to find the real killer, but not everyone wants her meddling in the past. This is the start of a trilogy, so if I like it, I will continue the series, and we will just see how it goes, but I am excited to give it a go in 2023. Okay, coming in at number 13 is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I have never read a book by Taylor Jenkins Reid, but I was told by a friend who's read all of her books that this is the one to start with, and I've wanted to read her books for a while, so I'm ready to go ahead and dive in. But it says, aging and reclusive Hollywood movie icon Evelyn Hugo is finally ready to tell the truth about her glamorous and scandalous life. But when she chooses unknown magazine reporter Monique Grant for the job, no one is more astounded than Monique herself. Why her? Why now? Monique is not exactly on top of the world. Her husband has left her and her professional life is going nowhere. Regardless of why Evelyn has selected her to write her biography, Monique is determined to use this opportunity to jumpstart her career. Summoned to Evelyn's luxurious apartment, Monique listens in fascination as the actress tells her story. And I believe it like jumps through the decades as she talks about like everything that's happened in her life. And I'm just kind of curious to see what this is even about, because I don't know a whole ton about it. And that's kind of the way I want to go into it, so I can be pleasantly surprised. Coming in at number 14 is a book that I wanted to read in 2022 and never got around to, and that is Lovely War by Julie Berry. I have heard such good things about this book. People say it made them cry. So this book is told from the point of view of Aphrodite, who is telling the tale because she's like facing judgment on Mount Olympus, and she's telling the tale of 4 people: Hazel, James, Aubrey, and Colette. It says a classical pianist from London, a British would-be architect turned soldier, a Harlem-born ragtime genius in the US Army, and a Belgian orphan with a gorgeous voice and a devastating past. So I'm just very, very intrigued. I don't want to know a whole lot about this one because I feel like I'm really, really going to love this one. I feel like it's going to be 5 stars, and I cannot wait to finally get to it next year. I've been putting it off for like no reason whatsoever, and this will be the year that I finally get to read it. All right, coming in at number 15 is the other chunker on this list, and that is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. Now, I had never read anything by this author, but in 2022, I had put The Bone Season on my 22 and 2022 list, read it, really loved it, want to continue that series. I am not a huge high fantasy girl. However, I feel like if anyone's going to make me love it, it's going to be Samantha Shannon, because there was just something about her writing in The Bone Season that I really, really, really loved. And I am excited to read this one because I have heard very, very good things. However, we all know this one is massive. The hardcover comes in at 804 pages, which is actually not as long as like Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, except that's a mass market paperback, so it's probably not actually that long. And we do have some notes and things at the end. So I am very, very excited to read this, so much so that I've actually pre-ordered the prequel to this already without even having read this one. So I'm going to really cross my fingers that this turns out to be a high fantasy book that I can really, really love, because I don't have the best luck with it. I don't read a ton of adult high fantasy. Actually, I don't think I've really read any adult high fantasy, but if anyone can make me love it, it will be Samantha Shannon. So, it's a chunker. I'm excited to read it though, because I've heard amazing things. I will be vlogging myself reading this book at some point in 2023, so stay tuned for that. Okay, at number 16 is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This is another one that I've just heard a lot about. I do know that some people really love it, some people don't. I'm curious to see where I'm gonna fall, but I feel like this sounds like something I could potentially really enjoy. So it says, Oliver Marks has just served 10 years in jail for a murder he may or may not have committed. On the day he's released, he's greeted by the man who put him in prison. Detective Colburn is retiring, but before he does, he wants to know what really happened a decade ago. As one of 7 young actors studying Shakespeare at an elite arts college, Oliver and his friends play the same roles on stage and off. Hero, villain, tyrant, temptress, ingenue, extra. I think I said that right. Did I say that right? Anyway. But when the casting changes and the secondary characters usurp the stars, the plays spill dangerously over into life, and one of them is found dead. The rest face their greatest acting challenge yet, convincing the police and themselves that they are blameless. So dark academia, it's a very big thing in the last couple years. I really haven't read that much of it, but this one sounds very, very intriguing. So I'm hoping I will really love it. Hopefully I will give it 5 stars. And it is number 16 on this list. Keeping with the dark academia vibes, number 17 is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. I am reading this solely because Kayla at Books and Lala loved it. Meg at Meg with Books loved it. A bunch of people have been reading it and loving it, and it's time for me to finally give it a go. So this one is another one that has to do with 6 friends. They attend a college reunion. There's an unsolved murder because one of their friends was killed, and they are pretty sure one of the other remaining 6 is responsible, and they're going to try to figure out who done it, basically. So, not going to say any more than that. I don't want to read the synopsis on this one. I want to kind of go in blind, and hopefully I will love it. I feel like this will be another 5-star. Coming in at number 18 is Barbed Wire Heart by Tess Sharp. This is another book that's on here because it is a backlist book from an author who I previously gave 5 stars to. In 2021, I read Far From You. Absolutely loved it, and I cannot wait to read more from this author. So we're going to start with Barbed Wire Heart this year in 2023. It says, never cut the drugs, leave them pure. Guns are meant to be shot, keep them loaded. Family is everything, betray them and die. Harley McKenna is the only child of North County's biggest criminal. Duke McKenna's run more guns, cooked more meth, and killed more men than anyone around. Harley's been working for him since she was 16, collecting debts, sweet-talking her way out of trouble, and dreading the day he'd deem her ready to rule the rural drug empire he's built. Her time's run out. The Springfields, her family's biggest rivals, are moving in. Years ago, they were responsible for her mother's death, and now they're coming for Duke's only weak spot, his daughter. There's just something real gritty and real and emotional about the way Tess Sharp writes, and I just feel like this one is going to be another fantastic example of that, and I cannot read to read it. There is one more book I believe that she's written that I still want to read as well, but Barbed Wire Heart is the one that we're putting on the list for 2023. At number 19 is another dark academia book, sort of, I think, and that is They Never Learn by Layne Fargo. This is one that got absolutely rave reviews in 2021, and I just never made time to give it a read, but it's about a professor who murders people, I believe. Let's see. Yeah, she's killing people on the university campus, and I don't want to know any more than that. So the woman's name is Clarke. She's an English professor. I just want to go in blind. I don't want to know a whole lot about it, but I have heard amazing things about this book, and I cannot wait to give it a read in 2023. At number 20, we're almost done, y'all, is Watch Over Me by Nina LaCour. I have read 2 books by Nina LaCour. This year, actually in 2022, I read Everything Leads to You. Loved it. It was 5 stars, one of my top books of the year. I also read Yerba Buena, which I gave like 4.5 stars. It wasn't quite as good as Everything Leads to You, in my opinion, but I loved that one too. And now we're working on Watch Over Me. This one is short. I didn't realize how short it was like when I ordered it, and I'm kind of intrigued to see what's going to happen. It only has 261 pages with like pretty good font size. So yeah, I'm curious to see what I think. She's an author who I'm going to slowly work through her backlist, which is why this one is on the list, and I cannot wait to give it a go. This one follows Mila. It says, Mila is used to being alone. Maybe that's why she said yes. Yes to a second chance in this remote place among the flowers and the fog and the crash of waves far below. But she hadn't known about the ghosts. Newly graduated from high school, Mila has aged out of the foster care system, so when she's offered a teaching job and a place to live on an isolated part of the Northern California coast, she immediately accepts. Maybe she will finally find a new home, a real home. The farm is a refuge, but it's also haunted by the past, and Mila's own memories are starting to rise to the surface. So yeah, we'll see. It's got like some kind of creepy, spooky vibes, which is very different from the other 2 books that I've read by her. So I'm very curious to see what I will think, but I have a feeling I will love it because there's just something about her writing that really works for me. At number 21 is The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah. I have never read a book by Kristin Hannah, but this one, again, is about World War II. It is set in France in 1939 in the quiet village of Carriveau. Basically, it's about like 2 different people. One is working with the French resistance against the Nazis, and one is about a woman and her daughter who wind up having to share their house with Nazi soldiers. So that's all I really want to know. Again, I don't want to go into it knowing a whole ton. I have heard that Kristin Hannah's writing is absolutely gorgeous. I really, really love any kind of historical book that has to do with World War II. As I've mentioned, I have several of them I would like to read this year that are not on this list. So we'll just see what I think. This will be my first Kristin Hannah, but I am betting it will probably be 5 stars. At number 22 is The Love Hypothesis by Hazelwood. No, I have not ever read a book by Hazelwood. I don't read a ton of adult romance. I am like slowly dipping my toe into it, or I should say I'm dipping my toe into contemporary romance because I do really like historical romance. I've read a ton of them in the past. I've read a lot of Nora Roberts. I've read a lot of Catherine Coulter, but I had kind of stopped reading romance for like a good chunk of time there. But this one had gotten such good reviews from people that I trust, like Meg at Meg with Books, who doesn't read a whole lot of romance and still gave this one 5 stars, that I'm intrigued. This one is about 2 scientists, or, okay, she's a 3rd-year PhD candidate. We have Olive and we have Adam, who is a professor, and basically they get into a fake dating type situation. And then I'm sure feelings will follow because that wouldn't be much of a romance if it didn't. So I am intrigued. I want to see what I think about this, want to see what I think about Hazelwood's writing. I have heard that she is quite obsessed with like focusing on how small her female characters are and how large her male characters are. So we'll kind of see. I've read a lot of fan fiction, and that happens a lot in fan fiction, so it doesn't typically bother me. And yes, I know that this was originally fan fiction, so that's why I threw that out there. But yeah, I'm hoping that I will really enjoy this because I also own Love on the Brain, and I've pre-ordered the new one that's coming out. What is it? Love Theoretically, I think. And hopefully we can make a couple vlogs out of my Hazelwood reading experience. But yes, that's the 22nd book. We're almost done, and I am excited to give this one a go and see what I think. And the final book on this list, number 23, is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. I am not a huge sci-fi person. However, I read Becky Chambers' Monk and Robot books this year and absolutely adored them. They just made me feel warm and fluffy. They put a smile on my face. I'm still thinking about them months after finishing them, and I want to try to give her other sci-fi series a go. This is book 1 in her Wayfarer series. I don't know much about it, so let me go ahead and read you a tiny bit of the synopsis because I don't really even know what I'm getting into, but it says, follow a motley crew on an exciting journey through space and one adventurous young explorer who discovers the meaning of family in the far reaches of the universe in this lighthearted debut space opera from a rising sci-fi star, which of course at this point she's already a star. This was published, let's see, this was published back in 2015. So obviously we already know how good of a writer she is. So I am a big fan of found family type stories. And I'm just curious to see what I will think about like a true blown sci-fi book. But the fact that it calls it lighthearted, again, makes me think that I'm going to have those warm and cozy vibes when I read it. And I am just excited to see if perhaps this might be a sci-fi series that I will really, really love. Not that I don't read sci-fi at all. There are several books that I have read and loved, but I don't generally gravitate towards sci-fi. So the Monk and Robot books were like out of my comfort zone, and I wound up adoring them. So we will see what happens with the Wayfarer series. If I like book 1, I will be continuing. So there you have it, y'all. Let me just tip you down. There's no way I'm picking this stack up, even though I don't even have all 23 books in this stack. Could you even imagine? Kudos to those of you who actually lift all those books up. But there you go. There's the list of 23 books that I want to read in 2023. If you have read any of these, please let me know down below in the comments what you thought. No spoilers, just, you know, general thoughts. And if you're planning on reading any of these in 2023, let me know that as well. Maybe we can buddy read. Other than that, that's all I've got for you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to my channel if you would like to see more from me. And I will see you in my next video. Bye, everyone.